We are back in Japan again, this time for the release of Black Bolt and White Flare, the latest Pokemon card sets. Except instead of going to Tokyo or Osaka like I usually do, I've actually headed up north about 5 hours to Sendai, which is a very beautiful city, which you guys can see, and a very different space for collectors, with the prices of singles, art rares, and special art rares kind of all over the place. But it's been great, it's been intriguing, I'm learning a lot, I'm picking up a bunch of cards, and I'm pretty excited to show you guys how cheap some of the singles are here in Sendai. So let's go have a look at some of the stores and what they've been selling on day 0, 1, and 2.
First up is Porca Car Door. This is like a pretty hidden, I want to say, but it is at the top of Loft, which is like a big shopping complex in the middle of Sendai across from the station. I really like this store. I kind of went in a few days before just to kind of scout it and see what they had in terms of their vintage, and had a really LGS kind of feel. There was like a big play space, lots of posters on the wall from the DPPT era, which was kind of cool. And I feel like that energy was kind of on display with their Black Bolt and White Flare cards that they had in the cabinet, which were all priced really, really well for basically release day. This was a day after release, and on the day of release, didn't really see too many cards in cabinets. Kind of had to like wait for people to come in and sell their cards. But once you started seeing them, you know, that Hilda there, 19,800 yen. The Whimsicott EX Special Art Rare felt really cheap at 4,000. That's less than retail for a box. And the Meloetta, which was a really nice card, 6,980 yen, so not too bad. Then you had the big fellas, so the Zekrom EX there, 29,800 yen. That is the special art rare, which I think does look better than the BWRs. The BWRs were at that 50,000 yen price point, which seemed pretty standard on or around release day. But the art rares, what really surprised me. Basically every art rare on display here was 280 yen, and it doesn't really get much cheaper than that, considering that you will get 4 art rares from a booster box of Black Bolt or White Flare. It does make sense for them to kind of be this cheap. There were a few outliers, stuff like the Seismitoad there, which has a pretty decent attack, and it looks like it could be a rogue deck if you can learn it with Kingdra EX and some other Pokemon. Plus it's illustrated by Shinji Kanda, so fantastic illustration there too. The Victini, that wasn't the promo, that was just the regular hit, but Victini's a popular Pokemon too, so price a little bit more than the rest of the art rares. That Unfazant, many are saying that it is the modern Latios special art rare. That's a joke, you know, it's a bit of an exaggeration. Seeing a lot of cards like the Pignite and the Emboar being 480 yen was really cool. I think that the whole Evo line for all the starters, probably some of the best illustrations from this set, but the starters themselves are always more expensive. You can see that Oshawott was 980, and Tepig was usually around about, you know, that 1,000 yen mark as well. I was trying to pick up as many Carablast as I could because the illustration is so funny. They're almost like getting electric shocked on the pier there. They had a cabinet here for yellow sticker cards. So typically these are cards that have a little bit of damage on them. You'll see them across Japan, but the prices in this cabinet were actually crazy. The Excadrill SAR for 600 yen. How often do you find a Mitsuhiro Arita special illustration or special art rare for that cheap? Overall, I felt like the cards in Porca Car Door were all really reasonably priced, and I picked up a whole bunch of 280 yen art rares. I don't usually do that on launch. They did have some sealed boxes for a bunch of different sets, but all of their sealed was at or below market. I feel like this was some of the cheapest you were seeing so close to launch day, probably because we were in Sendai, so you weren't seeing Tokyo prices. Next up was a very, very cool store called Seagull. So Seagull are like a bit of a chain. You see them up north. Don't really see these around Tokyo or Osaka, but there were a few Seagull in the Sendai general vicinity, you know, like about an hour around town. They had a lot of cards here. You know, they had a lot of special art rares, a lot of Sun and Moon stuff, a lot of hyper rares. They had some stuff dating back, you know, XY, black and white. They had a lot of those TTAS or just the general tag team regular rare or, you know, double rare, which is crazy how expensive those are gotten. You're going to see those in a whole bunch of other videos, but they had a lot of very well priced Black Bolt White Flare as well. Some yellow sticker, so close to launch. So all I can really think is maybe they were just pulled and they had maybe a bit of whitening around the edges or something. That tends to happen, especially these days with modern Japanese, because they're printing so much. The print quality has kind of degraded a little bit. So you do see very quickly yellow sticker cards. I don't think they're just being damaged from people who have mishandled them. But they had a whole bunch of art rares too, you know. They had everything that was in good condition as well. And the prices, you know, they're a little bit more expensive than Porca Car Door. It kind of just depended on the card. You know, the Whimsicott, the Caldio, that Jellicent, which is a bit of a sleeper card for a couple of reasons. Going to be pretty playable in Gardevoir and is illustrated by a relatively new artist. So decent price. But yeah, they had the Reshiram there. You can see 30,000 yen, which was about the release day price for that card. The Curum, undervalued in my opinion, but a great price, just a little bit more than a booster box. The Superior, the Excadrill, Meloetta's there again, Genesect, and then the Zekrom for some reason, 3,000 yen cheaper. That was one thing that I did notice in this store. As cards were coming in, there were cards that had stickers on them that looked like maybe launch day price, and then maybe as more cards were coming in, the cards behind them had slightly cheaper prices. So you can see some of the art rares are 500 yen and then others are 300, and there's no real discernible difference. It's not like one is more playable or is a more popular Pokemon than the other. The Emolga I kept seeing for about 1,200 yen, 900 yen. So that was about what you were seeing over the first couple of days. The Volcarona, 1,000 yen, beautiful card. Akira Egawa, one of their best. I mean, Akira Egawa never really fails to disappoint, but 500 yen was the standard here in Seagull. Next up is a store that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but if you're not, it is known as Book Off. They're a chain. You will see them all across Japan, and your mileage may vary. This one was stacked. They had a huge assortment of Pokemon cards, but one of the issues with the store was that the stickers were literally flat bang in the middle of the card. Not too bad for art rares. You can see that Shinji Kanda Magneton there. You can tell what the art rares were, but for anything else, especially for normal illustration cards, it was very difficult to tell. There was a hidden Tomokazu Komiya there, the Trubbish. You just have to have a very keen eye. The thing with book offs is that they can be a huge time sink. The more time you spend in them, the more likely you are to find something kind of cool, but you've just got to put in the work. So they had a whole bunch of Black Bolt, White Flare art rares as well, and these were the cheapest that I had seen, period. I kid you not, this is a day after release and we are seeing 180 yen art rares across the board. Some of the more expensive Pokemon or the more popular cards, like that Tepig, was 620 yen, plus tax puts it about 680. But that is crazy. That is cheaper than you are going to see at most stores. So naturally, I picked up a whole bunch of cards in here. I actually feel like looking back, I should have picked up a few Master Balls, but I didn't want to go too crazy. So close to release, I kind of wanted to gauge other stores, but 180 yen, it doesn't get much cheaper than that. That is basically $2 Australian. It's about what? $1.20 USD. So I kind of finished off a lot of the art rares that I was chasing in here. They did have the big chase cards as well. I didn't go for these, the BWRs, the SARs there. And those were priced at around, or maybe a little bit more than in some of the other stores that we'd seen. So it was just very odd. Usually you will see, 300, 400, 500 yen in book off. They don't always price things super dirt cheap, but there's that Seismitoad again, 880 yen. I picked that up because it's a great card. And like I said, how often are you going to find them these cheap? I feel like they just make for great trade opportunities with people, but it was wild. I had to document everything. I had to document all of it before I picked up a lot of these cards. Like the Zoroark, there's another great combination of cards there. Minccino, Chinchino, I feel like they've gotten enough love in the last couple of years. Thank goodness Lugia V-Star has finally rotated out. And then you had some SARs there. So the Buffalante, 1,600 yen, really cheap, but I didn't want to go too early on the SARs. I just wanted to focus on art rares, and I felt like at 180 yen, most of these cards were at their floor. Book Off stock a lot of used games as well. So when I was checking out that section, I came across this copy of Explorers of Sky, and I really regret not picking it up. 100 yen is so cheap compared to the English version. I can read and speak Japanese, but I didn't get it, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. So that wrapped up day one, or day after release. On day two, so the Sunday, 2 days after release, it was time to head to PDG Collectors Shop Sendai. So PDG Collectors Shop, they're like a new branch of stores that are opening up across Japan. Akihabara, Osaka, Nagoya all have stores. Sendai is one of their newer ones that opened up about a month and a half ago, and I was lucky enough to visit when they first opened up too. So PDG, you never know what you're gonna find when you go inside. There's a high frequency of people coming in and selling to the store, which means every other day you're gonna find a different card in their display. Vintage, modern, slabs, they have a very deep range. Once they sell out of their initial supply of boxes, they are kind of bound to the market. So they did have Black Bolt, White Flare boxes, as well as the deluxe boxes too. They were all priced around market for the time period. They put a lot of singles just openly out in display. So you don't really see this too often in Japanese card stores. Pretty much everything is behind a cabinet, but if you go up to their counter, you will see even Black Bolt White Flare art rares just sitting in there. And they were some of the cheapest art rares that we had seen aside from Porca Car Door. Speaking of some of the cheapest, they did have the BWR Zekrom EX there at the cheapest I'd seen it so far, 38,000 yen. So I did inspect that. It was in really clean condition, but I didn't want to go too early on some of those chase cards just yet. There were plenty more stores to see. But I always love visiting PDG Collectors Shop. They have some of the friendliest staff in all of Japan, and it is a pleasure to go in there and see him every time. Next up, I headed over to the E-Beans building, which has 2 card stores in it. The first is Hobby Station Sendai. So I'd actually been to this hobby station before, and one of the things I noticed at the time was that they didn't really stock a whole lot of Pokemon. They had a lot of Duel Masters, a lot of Digimon, a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh!, some One Piece as well, Y Sports, Hololive, but their Pokemon selection was very, very thin. However, it was there. They just didn't have real rhyme or reason to the range. You know, there was a lot of yellow sticker cards from different eras, but no real logic to the display, so didn't pay too much mind to that. But next to it, they had a big cabinet dedicated to Black Bolt and White Flare, so naturally I jumped into that. You can see there, Superior SAR. Absolutely love this card. It is so clean. 5,800 yen, you know, just a bit more than a box, not too bad. The Meloetta, another clean card. The Excadrill, criminally underrated. The Genesect, Jellicent there, 3,800 yen, and the Reshiram, 27,800 yen, so about market. They had a whole bunch of Master Balls, which kind of had me regretting not picking up more Master Balls over at the Book Off. Hilda there, 3,000 yen, a little bit more expensive than some of the other stores. So I feel like things were kind of just trying to find their feet. Usually that's how it goes the first 3, 4, 5 days. When it came to the art rares, I was noticing that the Snivy was probably one of the more expensive of the starters, probably the second most expensive next to Victini and the Seismitoad. There's that Carablast again. Everything was pretty much 500 yen. I picked that Carablast up at 500 yen though. Like I said, I think it's a really cool card. Electric was one of the other more expensive art rares because the ability is so strong. It lets you attach lightning from your discard to one of your benched Pokemon once per turn. So anytime you see Electric, that is likely why it's more expensive. But everything else was about 500 yen. So more expensive than Book Off and Porca Car Door. The Tepig there, 1,200 yen, but the Pignite and the Emboar, so much cheaper, and they're just as good. So I felt like some of the starter lines, you know, the second and third Evos were just a little bit disrespected. I can understand the appeal of the starter being more popular because it's the starter, but come on, man, put some respect on Samurot's name. That card is dope. Now, because I was in Sendai, I did want to do some sightseeing. So I had a car, went driving up to the mountains, and when I was coming home, what do you know? I came across a Book Off. So Book Off Super Bazaar Sendai Izumi Furuuchi. The previous Book Off that I'd visited was in the Sendai city area, in the heart of the city. So being a high traffic area and still having really good prices, I figured that this Book Off was going to be just as good, if not better. And it was good. They had a lot of yellow sticker, but I'm always really hesitant to pick up yellow sticker so early. However, looking back, I probably should have, because most of these cards, they just look like they're off center. Being so close to release, they were very likely pack fresh as well. So if I was really thirsty for this set, I probably would have picked up more. Looking back, you know, 21,000 yen for the SARs, each there, Reshiram and Zekrom. And even the BWRs, that was the cheapest that I'd seen them so far. But I just feel like this set has room to fall, like Heatwave Arena and Battle Partners did, so I didn't go on any of those. It is always really tempting to pick them up and then bring them back home. I guess vending culture is so infectious, and you just see deals, basically. You see opportunity to kind of trade toward other cards, but it's very difficult to stop yourself getting sucked into that, you know, buy and resell mentality. And I feel like it kind of takes away a little bit. So it's a bit of a tug of war there. All the art rares were about 500 yen. There were some other choice ones there. I don't know if you guys saw the Seismitoad, 1,000 yen. I did end up picking that up because I just think the card is so good. But everything else about 400, 500 yen. No major standouts. It did feel like some of the more premium art rares that we'd seen in some of the other stores were a little bit cheaper. Some of them were 400 yen, some of them were 600 yen. Again, no real rhyme or reason. There were a couple of 280 yens hiding there. You just had to look. Then you see some of the other SARs, you know, Jellicent, that's the cheapest I'd seen it anywhere, but the Whimsicott was more expensive than I'd seen prior to. When it came to the SARs that weren't yellow sticker, so deemed to be, you know, as close to mint as possible, they were priced around market. Again, just looking at that Jellicent, 2,500 yen, I probably should have picked that up. It is a really clean card, and the artist being so new really draws me to it. Keldeo there, 2,000 yen, Buffalon, 2,000 yen, so about what we'd seen in other stores for some, but for others, a bit more expensive. Heading back to Sendai, and this time it was time to visit Labo or Card Labo. You may have heard of this store before. It's a chain. They have a few stores all across Japan, a few. They got a lot, okay? There's a lot of Card Labo, and they have a lot of cards. They got a lot of modern, and they got a lot of vintage. A lot of the time, you will see that the vintage is yellow sticker, so some slight imperfections. But if you inspect these cards, you can find some absolute heat at really, really good prices. A lot of the time, they're deemed imperfections. It's really nothing more than maybe a slight bit of whitening, or maybe the card deemed to be off center. They did have a lot of black and white flare as well, being so close to release and being one of the biggest stores in the area. So you can see huge range, but not as competitive prices as we'd seen at some of the other stores. You know, the SARs had started to come down, 24,800 yen. So lower than that launch day, 30,000 yen. Ends plot there as well. Really want to pick that up, but I hadn't opened up a lot of Black Bolt yet, so I didn't want to go too early. The Master Balls were way cheaper here though. So 600 yen seemed to be the floor for the Master Balls, and then the more expensive Pokemon, or the more playable, I should say, actually, about 1,500 yen. And then when it came to the art rares, 500 yen. So the Master Balls technically are rarer than the art rares, but the art rares look cooler, so that's why they're a little bit more expensive. You can see that Seismitoad, 1,500 yen. So more than we'd seen it at any other store. Because these sets are so big, you kind of get lost looking at them, and it's hard to find the card you're looking for. And then you sometimes oversee like a good pickup. Anytime I saw those starters cheaper than their standard, again, like that Pignite 500 yen, I just picked it up. Like I said, I left that Seismitoad on the table. Really regretted not picking this up. I also regretted not using my point card in here. I would have spent a silly amount, but I didn't use my point card. Why? What was I thinking? Eventually, I had to leave Sendai because I had to go back to Tokyo to catch my flight home. But I was in Tokyo for a little bit, which meant I'd head to Akihabara and Dragon Star. So I'd say Dragon Star is probably the best store for modern in Akihabara. There are a lot of stores, but because Dragon Star just gets so many cards, they sell them much cheaper than the rest of the card stores in Akihabara. But when I went in, it was barren. I don't think I'd ever seen Dragon Star like this before. Now, bear in mind, this was a week after release, so it feels like the store had kind of been gutted by tourists, which makes sense. But I would have expected to see more on the shelf. The SARs and the BWRs were more expensive than what we'd seen over in Sendai, which kind of makes sense because this is a higher frequency area. You got more tourists passing through. Maybe they're not as aware of the price of these cards. So Sendai was definitely cheaper, but you've also got to like get up to Sendai. 45,000 yen, that was basically the release price, 27,000 yen. It's pretty much what it is online right now. So no major bargains in here, but if Glory of Team Rocket, Heatwave Arena, Battle Partners are anything to go off, these cards will drop significantly between now and I guess 2 or 3 releases out from here. So Jellicent was 2,500 yen. So that was kind of cool to see. I still regret not picking it up, but like I said, there's going to be so much of this set out there. I fully expect the card prices to come down further from here. Some of the art rares were 300 yen, so that was kind of good to see. Pretty in line with that Seagull store that we'd visited over in Sendai. And then some are 500 yen. No real like logic to that. Emolga 700 yen was probably the cheapest I'd seen. Maybe it's this Dragon Star had insane prices before I got here. And so the people that had come through before me were like, hey, I don't see it getting any cheaper than this. I mean, 300 yen is still pretty good. That is basically the art rare floor. And they've come through and they've just picked up as much as they could. Oshawott there, 1,500 yen. I can understand why it's still on the shelf. That is the most expensive I'd seen it, but it is a starter. Malouetta had come down, so 4,000 yen there for the SAR. Actually kind of interesting looking back. Part of the reason why I like making these videos is because it's so hard to rationalize Japanese Pokemon card prices. Even when I'm here the week of release, the variance between stores is just so interesting to me. And that's why I guess I kind of like making these videos. I guess the moral of the story is the card prices always come down. It's easy to get sucked into week 1, day 1. But if you just wait a little bit, you'll see things hit their floor eventually, and then you can sweep them all up. So hopefully that was insightful. My next series of Japan videos touring through all the different card stores is in the works. So make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks as always for watching.